What are we talking about today?
Well, Rick Dodd sponsors the show, respectforyou.com. You can go check that out. And Rick's working on a big case right now, so it was hard for me to get in touch with him today. This topic came late in the week, and I didn't get a lot of good questions in for him. I wish he was here today. This is right up his alley, but I'm gonna do the best I can, trying to stand in his stead. Okay, and give some
He casts
good.
a large shadow.
Yeah, he does. He does. He definitely does. It's just like a encyclopedia of knowledge, especially when you talk about his experience, because he's been around since the 1800s. I'm just messing with you. But really, he's impressive, and so I'm going to do my best because we're talking about negligence and negligence per se, and gross negligence, and all of this really goes into play exactly what they do.
Let me I guess set it up right. We're talking about gun manufacturers. They sell a gun, somebody buys it, and that particular gun or whatever ends up being used in a crime, and then the people involved in that crime want to sue the manufacturer for the gun. So that's basically what we're talking about, right?
Right. In the San Antonio shootings, is the folks. The article you sent me was them coming after Academy Sports and Outdoors for selling the AR, the rifle, to the guy that used it in the shooting in San Antonio, and their argument is essentially that the guy was from Colorado, had a Colorado ID. In Colorado, they wouldn't have been able to sell it to him under the Colorado statutes, but this was in Texas. But still, because he presented the Colorado ID, they should have known, right, that the Colorado laws would have come into play, because the federal statutes say that if you're going to sell to a buyer in this state, in another state, they have to meet in person, and the sale has to comply with the rules of both states. And so, I mean, does that law apply? Yeah, I mean, I can see how that law applies here, but does that still make them negligent? And the reason that is that responsible for this, and the reason that we're having this discussion now, is that Academy moved for what we call a summary judgment, and they filed and asked for the case to be dismissed because there was really no issue for any jury to decide. There was no fact question that was a gray area that somebody needed to decide. There was nothing that even a legal, part legal, part factual question that needed to be decided, because as a matter of law, as a matter of based on rules of law that we've had, or based on other logical facts that make it impossible, right? There was nothing to decide, and that the case should be dismissed because there's going to be no liability regardless. There's no way a jury could find, right, for the plaintiff, who is the families in this case. And so, again, yeah, I mean, going out to the families is definitely bad. Something needs to be done, but that's what the lawyer for Academy argued. But Academy's not responsible. Academy's not the one that should be held responsible. So, since there's no liability to Academy, the case should be dismissed. And one reason that they're going off of is the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act, the PLCAA. Okay, and that just makes manufacturers and sellers of firearms not responsible, not liable for criminal acts that are used with the firearms that they sell. And a lot of this was done because, and you should read essentially the very first part of that statute, that's basically kind of like a preamble explaining why they've made that law and what it exists for. And there's just tons of things going into saying, because there was a big push and people were just suing the gun manufacturers and gun sellers, gun dealers, just to try to pass legislation and just to make it really hard to sell the products, and for no other reason than for a lot of times than for political change. And they knew a lot of these lawsuits, they knew they were frivolous. Mm-hmm. They were simply filing these lawsuits to make it really expensive, right, for the gun manufacturers to operate, which is not right. It's not right. I mean, some cases were arguably, had a justifiable basis, but there were many that the politicians brought and were upfront about it, that said, hey, we don't care that the case really is stupid. We're just trying to make it really expensive. I think one politician that brought the suit says this is going to be death by 1,000 cuts. Okay, and essentially what they meant is they were going to try to make it so expensive by filing lawsuits in every single state and district in every single state that they couldn't operate, right? And get the gun manufacturers and dealers and sellers to agree to some kind of very, very staunch legislation. Well, then there was some agreement made. Well, then they came in and got legislation passed on their behalf, which was the PLCAA, which makes them not responsible, not liable when criminal acts are done with their weapons. Now, it does not remove responsibility in several certain cases, and it's essentially, it does not remove responsibility that would be held, that any other manufacturer of any other product would be held responsible for.
Like faulty materials.
Faulty materials, the gun blows up, and hurts you. You could sue them for that, absolutely. Some kind of breach of contract action, or there's a warranty. They promised you the gun was going to work and it didn't work. You could sue them for the warranty.
Why can I sit here and anybody else sit here and say everything you're saying makes common sense, but when you go apply it to the gun manufacturer made a gun, it went through a wholesaler, went to a dealer, and then went to Academy. The person signed it. They've got from what I remember, like 3 ways of checking somebody. They go over their paperwork 3 times. They do a 4473. They do a NICS check, and they sell the gun and walk the person out the door. Common sense does not say that they should be liable.
Right, and that's what Academy's saying. That's Academy saying that's exactly what we did. Academy's saying, okay, they didn't actually admit this, but in their pleadings, everything is sealed right now. I can't go online and look at it. I can't go online and actually see what's going on. They've got it sealed. So, in fairness to both sides, I haven't been able to do as good a research as I'd like to talk about it because I can't see everything that they file. But Academy's probably saying, okay, maybe we did. They don't think they violated any law, but the lawyer would probably at some point say, maybe we possibly violated this federal statute because it doesn't comply with Colorado law. But that doesn't, even then, we're still not responsible. There's no way that this is what we'd call negligence per se. And that kind of brings me into this next two things. So there's 2 other ways that you can get, well, really 3 other ways, but 2 are provided in the same subsection. On the PLCAA, it says that a manufacturer, dealer, seller can be liable, responsible, if they violated a federal or state statute as far as the sale is concerned, and that was approximate cause, of the harm that resulted in the case.
Explain both, please.
So it would be like if I knew that you weren't allowed to have a firearm, and I knew you weren't, and say because I saw your felony conviction, and yet I falsified a document.
No, that's not good.
Right, and sold it to you anyway, and then you go out, right, as I assisted you in committing this offense, right, and then you go out, right, and do some crime of robbery.
You were part of the cause.
Robbery that you've already been convicted of. Okay, that would probably qualify under those statutes. And then there's this other thing called negligent entrustment, and it's maybe hard to do it in a gun context, but let's say for driving purposes. I don't have a driver's license, okay, and you know that I've not been qualified to drive. I haven't passed a driving test, okay, but you lend me your vehicle.
It never happened, but go ahead.
You lend me. You see me drive.
Not my car. No, not my car. Not my car.
I'm late to court, man. Lawyers are the worst, speeders probably, but so you lend me your vehicle, and then in the process of driving somewhere, right, I hit somebody, right? You can be responsible for that, for what we call negligent entrustment. You were negligent in entrusting, your property into my hands when you knew that I wasn't qualified to operate that property in a safe, right, and reasonable manner based on the laws of where we are, okay? And so that would be a negligent entrustment type of case. There was also what we call negligence per se. And negligence per se means it's by law. By law, right? It's negligent. And this would be, let's say you have a building code that requires certain conditions to be met. And if the builder doesn't follow those laws, he can be held criminally responsible, right? Or at least fined in some criminal aspect. So then the builder builds the house. Turns out he didn't follow those rules, and the house collapses and falls on the family. Okay? There's going to be automatic finding of negligence. So instead of having to prove regular negligence, which is there was a duty and a violation of that duty, to the specific people. Okay, we're not gonna even need to prove that. We're gonna have that in the bag. It's gonna be proven. You violated this ordinance. The house fell down, right?
Per se.
Based on your violation of that statute, that was negligent. Okay, now, just because that's negligence per se does not mean you can prove causation. Okay, and what we say by proximate cause in a negligence action, it's got to be not only a duty, a violation of that duty, right? And a proximate cause. That violation of that duty was a proximate cause of the damages to the plaintiff.
We got a call coming in. Ross, let's see what we got here. You ready, Rick? Welcome to the program. You're on the air. Who am I talking to?
Yes, sir. I wanted to find out what the temperature is out there this morning.
It's kind of cold, to be honest with you, with a little bit of wetness. 36 degrees, sir. Thank you.
And so, yeah.
Stop me, Ross. Stop me. Okay.
No, thanks
Ladies
for
and
calling.
gentlemen, this is the Aaron's High Cap Adventure Radio program. It comes on at 10 in the morning, gets over at 12 in the afternoon. It's concerning guns. And the only reason I would be talking weather is if it adversely affected my weapons, maybe with rust or things of that nature. So wait till after 12 or do it earlier. Thank you.
Well, anyway, so if there's negligence per se, and this is the interesting part, right? So they violated. Let's assume that they did, because I think that it's a good argument. I think that it's a good argument. There was this rule in Colorado. I haven't read the Colorado rule, but let's say that it applies here and that it wasn't legal in both states. It was absolutely legal in Texas, right? But in both states, and there's another previous subsection to that I think that the defense, the academy stores could argue that makes that other one inapplicable. But anyway, let's assume that other one applies, right? And they violated that state or federal law. Is that negligence per se? Does that make them have a duty that they violated to the plaintiffs in this case? I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know what the judge is going to decide, but I would say that it's a hard case to win from the plaintiff's standpoint, because that would mean it's society in general. So on a negligence per se case, you've got to have the violation be made, right, to protect a certain class of people. Well, here you have a person take the gun and do a criminal act on some unknown people that, how could Academy foresee that? Yeah. So is that something that that law was made to protect just society in general? I don't, society, because think about it. Anybody could have been hurt with the gun. So if you say that they violated a rule about transferring a weapon that makes it legal in both, it has to be legal in both states, and it wasn't legal in both states, and that's the rule they violated, right? Does that make them negligent in this case? Because is that law made to protect all of society for guns? Can it stretch that far? I don't know what they would say the class of people were that were being protected by that specific provision.
Ross, let me tell you something. I've been selling guns for about 20 years, okay? And way in the beginning of my gun selling career, I wanted to be available for any type of person who wanted to buy a firearm from any location, ship it off, do whatever. And as time went on, and the craziness kept getting worse and worse and worse about the sale of guns, it got to the point where California came up with these crazy laws. And if I accepted a gun from California, I could be in a lot of trouble if something happened. If I sent a gun to California and something happened, I would be liable from California's point of view. And so I got to the point where if somebody wants to buy a gun from me out of state and I send it directly to a dealer, that's one thing. And then they can do the paper transfer, that's one thing. But then if you can sell in the state of Texas, I think you can sell rifles to connecting states, to people who live in connecting states. I will not do anything. I won't sell anything to anybody who is outside of the state, who does not have proper identification, who makes me feel weird about doing the sale, because there's so much crazy stuff in there when it comes to the legal aspect of it, that I've got to the point where, do I know you? Do you live around here about an hour radius? Okay, I'm playing it safe. I don't want to take the risk anymore, because you got these fanatics out there who are just going crazy about taking guns away. And I want to segue this to this. How come they don't sue car manufacturers when one of these crazies drives up on the sidewalk and kills 10, 15 people with one swipe of a car? Why don't they ban Dodges or Fords or whatever?
Which is exactly why they made the PLCAA, right? I mean, that's exactly what they're saying. People are going to do bad criminal acts, with any kind of thing that can be considered a weapon that they could use to carry out their scheme.
Does that cover any type of manufacturer, or just gun manufacturers?
It's just gun manufacturers.
Okay.
It's because, like I said, they were trying to stop all of this litigation that was brought simply to bring down the industry, to make it too costly, even though they had no basis, right, in law, right?
So they just don't like guns. It has nothing to do with saving lives. They want to do whatever they can to hurt the gun industry, because the same can be said for knives, same can be said for cars, baseball bats. They all commit murder, and they've done it many a times.
Correct, and I don't know that the families in this case have that goal in mind to bring it down. They may feel like they have a legitimate. So I'm not going to sit here and say that, but this is definitely not like the politicians who brought cases that for no purpose and stated no purpose other than to make it too expensive to operate a business, right? I believe in this case, I think the better case, honestly, is against the federal government, and it's probably going to fail because of governmental immunity, but the Air Force knew that this guy had problems, and they did not report it for the Knicks. That's why Academy sold the gun, because the Knicks came back clean. So if anybody should be upset, it should be Academy should be upset with the United States Air Force.
I totally agree.
And so, I mean, there's definitely responsibility in this case, and that's why I don't feel like this is a good time to say that this case is brought solely for the fact of for political gain. I'm not saying it's not being used for that in some sense, but I think there are some issues in this case that are legitimate. But from the standpoint of the Air Force not reporting the things that they knew, that right there should be the case.
I don't want to be misquoted here, but that was not just the only case. After looking at it, it was either the Air Force had a bunch of them, or they looked at all the military forces, and it ended up being a lot of things that were not brought to Nick's attention. A lot of cases of service members who should not be having guns because of some type of criminal activity or whatever have not been reported to the proper authorities, so that when you go to buy a gun, they show up on the Nick's check.
Right, and so I think when you consider it that, I don't see why the PLCAA wouldn't apply, because you still have the same concept, right, of a manufacturer, seller, dealer that sold a weapon to somebody that was worked properly. It was not malfunctioning. It was not a breach of contract warranty issue. They may have violated some technical licensing rule from Colorado, but that had nothing to do with the criminal act that the guy brought on his own right intention to do, that was totally separate, that was not foreseeable from Academy standpoint.
If you're being sued for one thing, and it comes to find out that...
Why would Academy foresee it when the next check comes back good?
No.
And that's what I'm saying. That's why it's not... Why would they expect this to happen when everything clears?
I know, but what I'm getting at is this. If they're being sued for one particular reason, and in the course they find out, well, they didn't follow this federal rule, but it had really nothing to do with the initial cause for being sued, can they be affected by that being found out in the course of a trial? Did that make sense?
So the federal statute makes a presumption that they have actual knowledge of all the laws in both states, unless evidence to the contrary. The issue is, just because you have a license from Colorado doesn't mean you're still a resident there.
Right.
A resident there. I mean, it was reasonable cause, maybe, okay, to believe. So that's what I'm saying. Maybe there's some technical issue that they violated. But he could have told them right up front that, look, I'm no longer a resident. I just haven't got a new license yet. And if that was the case, they wouldn't even consider any Colorado law. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's still not foreseeable, in my opinion, when the next check comes.
Check them out first, see what they want. Okay.
When the next check comes back good and the person seems to otherwise be reasonable and gives a reasonable purpose for purchasing the weapon, right? Why would they have any other expectation that there's going to be a substantial risk? And then remember that proximate cause is not just cause and effect. So it's not just a but for. In other words, this would not have happened but for this action. That can go back to a fly in Egypt caused a hurricane in Texas, right? Mm-hmm. Kind of thing. You can always have that kind of chain reaction type of cause. So that's a cause and fact. You got to have that. But then you got to have a substantial risk that's foreseeable, right, to a reasonable person, okay? And so what doesn't qualify as proximate cause is just furnishing right, a condition which leads to the injury. That in and of itself is just a cause and fact, and it's not going to be enough. And so just furnishing a weapon that is used in a criminal act later, that's in an intentional way, that's not, foreseeable, especially when the next check comes back that this is a reasonable guy, right? Then I don't see how there's proximate cause here, but
What if on a form, form,
I believe it's a great argument from the plaintiff's side. But
what if on a form 4473 that an individual has to fill out before they can get a firearm to get approved by NICS, somehow NICS approves them, but during the question and answer on the form, they answer, their true answer should be no's, but they put yeses. The individual causes a crime. You had given him the gun. How does that affect the dealer? And same concept idea?
when you say yes, checks yes to what answers? To what question?
Have you ever been arrested? Have you ever been convicted of something more than I'm ad-libbing here, more than 12 months that you could have been put in jail? Have you ever renounced your citizenship? I'm doing this off the fly. Just there's a whole bunch of questions, about 12, 13 questions that you answer either yes or no.
Well,
and,
I think you would have a problem. I mean, you don't think so?
Well, let's say they're.
I know Nick's comes back's good, but then you're sitting there.
But they're saying their true answer should be no, but they're checking. Their true answer should be yes, but they're checking no. No, I've never.
Well, there
done
should
this.
be enough discipline from the clerk or whoever's taking it to go, man, did you just mess up and accidentally do?
No, you're missing what I'm saying. A person's lying on the form. They're saying no, I never did this, but in reality they did. And when you present it to NICS, it slips through, and all of a sudden.
Oh, correct. How would you know? I don't think you're responsible. I mean, you're lying. It passes NICS. How would you be responsible?
I would think it's the same concept that's going on with Academy, right? They did their best, except for that. Other
So
thing.
the plaintiff saying really their biggest issue, their biggest, I think, helping block in this case, their biggest advantage here is they're saying he presented a Colorado ID, which would have then put Academy on notice that he was a resident of Colorado, and therefore they should have complied with the Colorado law before they did it. And they're saying that should have put him on notice, hey, he's 850 miles from home and he's purchasing this stuff with cash. That is also a red flag. Which I don't really, if he's saying he's living here in Texas, right, I don't know that that's a red flag. I sure don't know that puts you. But I agree that this is a better case than, all those other, all the ones that we've talked about just here before.
Yeah, I'm raising an eyebrow too, but I don't know, because I don't know it all. I'm just raising my eyebrow because I know what I would do. I'm just thinking.
No, I still don't think they're responsible. I still think that the motion for summary judgment is good, but I definitely think that this was definitely an inventive, a great way to try to make somebody responsible under these rules. I think that it's not a frivolous case by any means. I don't think it's frivolous. I don't know that it's a victorious one. We'll have to see what the judge decides. I think.
No, the only reason I say I don't know is because I know how this stuff can happen. And so if I'm selling the gun in a situation like that, it's not because if he comes clean with the NICS check. I'm only concerned with if something ever did happen, I know they're probably going to come back to me. So I'm thinking, forget it. I'm gonna dot all my I's, cross my T's to make sure as much as I can that I'm not screwing up here. But I wouldn't think under that basic situation that, okay, there's a problem if NICS check approved it. Now, I'll tell you what, we're running out of time a little bit here, and I wanted to go over the personal sale of firearms to each other, how that can potentially cause a liability situation, God forbid, when you sell the handgun or rifle to somebody and that somebody causes a crime with it. How can it come back to haunt you?
Really, that's another reason why that preamble, it doesn't necessarily, that rule, that PLCAA doesn't necessarily affect, right, a private seller. Okay, so you don't have the same protection probably as a major gun manufacturer and dealer and seller. And so, but that's the thing, is that, one, what are they going to get from you unless you're some millionaire? What are they going to get? What would be the point of that case? And that was kind of like why they were bringing all those cases, because they're just tired of gun manufacturers making billions of dollars, right? And they're saying, and they're against their gun. They're it's not part of their political, right, standpoint to sell guns. So they're trying to bring down the gun manufacturers because the gun manufacturers have billions of dollars to lobby against that political viewpoint.
I would think it's because the attorney feels that he can get money out of this person that sold the gun to this other person, and it's more than he would have had before.
Right, but you can ask Rick. It's extremely hard, and I can tell you this from just executing judgments, going and recovering property. It's hard to get. It's hard to squeeze blood from a turnip. Okay, even with somebody that's got money and maybe they have property outside the exempt property rules, because you got homestead is exempt. Your people that live in your household that have a vehicle and need a vehicle to drive to and from a work or something that's all exempt. There's going to be household jewelry and property that's exempt. You're going to have your livestock that's going to be exempt. Your farm equipment that's exempt. In other words, I can't get it. All that stuff is exempt from execution. I can't touch it.
Well, what isn't exempt? So we can maybe.
As you got to have over a certain amount of, and the amount of money is different, but you're probably looking at, you got to have over $100,000 to $250,000 worth of stuff for me to actually go get. And you got, and your retirement, your 401k is exempt, your Social Security is exempt. I mean, I can't get any of that stuff. Okay, and so I mean, I'm not saying that it's impossible to garnish people's.
You know, what would be a
account,
really
but
good way to stop all this legality stuff is tell everybody, look, you want to sue, you can't get this, you can't get this, you can't get this, you can't get this. It's going to be super hard to get this, this, and this. And there's a possibility, but although it's slim and it's going to cost you lots of money in attorney fees to get this, they're going to go, forget it. Let's just be nice to each other.
So I mean, that's right. It's really hard to just go after and sue the everyday individual and it be a suit that's worth it unless they have some kind of property that falls outside of that. And we have sued people that have property outside the exempt property statutes. But Rick, I'll tell you, that's what, makes it very difficult sometimes to turn people down. Because, I mean, I've had people come in the office, just their face is bloody still and bleeding. They've got stitches from the hospital and saying, this girl beat me up and she was wrong. Right? It was a false identity case. She thought I was a girl cheating with her husband. I've had this case walk in and it was definitely wrong. Like, and that girl is liable, but she's got 2 kids and a single job, one job, and she's getting government.
Right.
So how are you gonna get?
I know.
How are you gonna get anything from that? And so,
Look, I don't want to put you on the spot. We've talked about this before, but if you can wing it here, what would be a good way to secure yourself to the best of your ability as an individual selling a firearm?
go through somebody like you, like we talked about before, and they have those forms. You can just Google the firearm bill of sale forms, and they've got the checklist. But you definitely want something in writing. We talked about even if you're going to buy a gun for your niece or nephew, even if you've got the consent, even if some reason it's valid, you need to make sure, right, that you get something in writing saying that it was okay for you to transfer that firearm. You need to get a checklist to say they're not a mentally incompetent person. They're a citizen of the United States. They're not a convicted felon. They don't have any violation for family violence. They're not a fugitive on the run from justice. They're not, right? There's no protective order issued against them at the current time.
And you're talking that this is another form that for a private person that's almost mocking or mimicking a...
If you're really worried about it, you could call me, 254-605-4140. It's 254-605-4140. We'll give those forms for free. I'll just tell you where to go Google, really. Right? The forms are out there. You've got them. Okay? I mean, you can do a checklist. We've always said that they should go through somebody like you.
That's the best way to do it because, I mean, it'll cost a transfer fee to you for the purpose of the dealer doing it, but it won't be that much. But in reality, here's how it works. You have possession of the firearm. You own it. You give it to me. As soon as I put it in my books, you don't own it anymore. I technically own it. When the person comes to buy it, they do the proper paperwork. They get approved by NICS. I say, okay, I can let you have it. Now it's their piece of property. There's a paper trail to show where it came from and where it went to and who's got it at the moment. So that protects you a lot. Okay, Ross, any final parting words? Anything you want to go over?
No, if there's some rule out there that you think that I've missed that maybe does protect you as a private seller, I can see how I could have missed that one. But email me with that or any other questions you got at benton@watson.legal. That's benton@watson.legal. Just make sure you leave your phone number. We get a lot of people that email and don't have a way for me to call them back, and sometimes it's not something I can email.
Now, look, we've gotten a lot of good topics from listeners who sent us in some topics, and so I'm going to put that out there again, just like Ross just did. If you got a question or something, or if you got a topic that you want to hear talked about when it pertains to, firearms protection, legalities, the whole works, we try to keep it within the realm of the show. But if there's something out there that's interesting and the public would really like to hear about it, we'll talk about it.
And if you got a personal injury case or so your firearm blew up or something like that, definitely call me or Rick Dodge. Go to Rick. I'll just refer it. But if you got a judgment you want to execute, just call me because he won't do it. So,
right.
and then come holler at me at 105 East Main Street here in Cameron. Big milk cow on the side. You can't miss the building, man.
Did you put that roll of hay out there yet?
I got it's a work in progress.
That'd be a 3D picture there. They got the hay roll in the front, the cow on the wall. All right. Look, let's go on out and take a break. And when we come back, we're going to have the delicious Janae Goodman talking chocolates. Chocolates. Sounds delicious. See you on the other side.